Mika, we last hour we were talking about September 11th and talking about it from policy implications, but also obviously there are so many personal stories, so many tragedies that happened on that day. But you actually, that was one of your first days at CBS, and tell us what happened that morning for you.
Well, we were covering it like any other story. I went running down there, ended up having to run down there in my bare feet because there was gridlock on the streets. And I was actually standing right next to Byron Pitts for CBS News. And as the towers began to fall, but what we saw before that was unspeakable. And that was people making that horrific decision of whether to jump.
And you said in real time, your mind
I
could
couldn't
not
get my mind around
grasp exactly what was happening. And you didn't, even though you saw it, your mind didn't process that these were people that had chosen to jump from the top of the towers. Also, you've told me before that when the first tower was falling, you just stood transfixed staring at it, and that it was Byron who actually pulled you away and threw you under a truck
it just seemed so impossible, that structure that was so big and so magnificent and so obviously strong and had so many people in it. It seemed so impossible what was happening right before our eyes. Literally, we were so close, we were craning our necks to see the top, and then the top began to crumble down towards us. And like so many others, we ran, we were covered with soot, and we stayed down there for weeks and tried to get our arms around a story that was so close to us that in some ways it was very hard to connect with the reality. For me, my brain saved me from actually terrible depression because I was so busy covering the story that I wasn't necessarily able to grasp it, but I was also able to tell it in real time. And then in the months after, I think we all began to really suffer the ramifications of what had happened to our country and to so many people that were right here in New York City with us.
Willie, it's so hard, Willie, for people that weren't in New York at the time or didn't have the relationship with New York the way that you and your family always have, to understand what that area was like after September 11th. I always tell people that whenever you would go anywhere below Houston, it was like you were entering a cathedral for months. Just complete silence, complete reverence, people going to work, doing whatever they could to try to rebuild the area and start the rebuilding of this country's spirit.
Yeah, I share Mika's impression. I actually wasn't in New York. I was working for CNN in Atlanta, so I didn't see it with my own eyes, but it seemed impossible. And Jay Johnson actually just said the same thing. For the first time in my life, he said, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't process that what was happening in front of my eyes actually was happening. I grew up in a commuter town in New Jersey, just across the river. We lost 12 people that day, including my next door neighbor, including a good family friend. My sister-in-law was pregnant. She ran down 70 flights of stairs and got out. Thank God. So we think about her always on this day, and her now junior in high school son who was in her belly that day. I also think about the aftermath. Well, of course, the firefighters and the police officers and the first responders who died that day. But the men and women of the military who were sent to Afghanistan, 2,400 of them dying. The men and women who were sent to Iraq because of this, 4,500, more than 4,500 dying that day. I also think about the first responders who worked on the pile, and now more than 2,000 of them have died because of respiratory illnesses. And they're expected perhaps by the end of the year, this year, to have more deaths from that than from people who died on that day. So the ripples from this day continue to go out and will for as far as we'll be able to see. And Heidi, you were in the White House that day on September 11th, 2001. What was it like from the inside?
Well, I was actually swimming upstream to make it to the White House. I got a call after the Pentagon was hit. 2 calls, one from my editor saying you need to get down there right away. another from my family saying, don't you dare go down there. So, of course, I was on the Metro swimming upstream. I got there, and we were getting briefings on the corner of Lafayette Square, and I just remember thinking how crazy this was, that there was another plane missing, and we knew that it was either headed for us or it was headed for the Capitol. And sitting there with my colleagues, positioning ourselves such that if there was projectile, whatever it was, that we would be far enough back from it. And of course, the regular press pool was with George Bush on the plane, and then they assembled a separate type pool to go with the rest of the White House staff. We were taken to a secure location, and I remember standing behind Karen Hughes somewhere in a bunker in Washington, just watching on replay the towers falling over and over again, and knowing that the lifestyle that we had, the freedom, the innocence in a way, was never going to be the same. The second more personal hit for me was that a day later, my mother called, and my brother had just gotten through boot camp, and she said, Heidi, do you have a map? And I said, yes, and she said, your brother's in the Indian Ocean. Do you know what that means? And of course, we didn't hear from him for a while, and later found out that he was in the first battle group to be deployed. He was on an amphibious assault ship, the USS Peleliu. He's a photographer, and to this day, I think suffers with some of the trauma of taking pictures of a lot of dead bodies, dead Taliban U.S. soldiers. And so just the ramifications, the widespread effects this has had on a lot of families, I think that demonstrates.
And of course, Heidi was talking, David Ignatius, about the Capitol and the White House being one of those two being targets. We, of course, remember also this morning those on Flight 93 that saved those, lost their own lives, but saved those who were working in the Capitol or in the White House. And there is a fitting memorial to them in Pennsylvania. You know, Thomas Ricks, I remember, my God, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was listening to him on NPR, and he was talking about how a child born on September 11th, or a child who was at a bus stop going into second grade on September 11th was now fighting in Afghanistan. Well, we continue fighting in Afghanistan, and now you can say that a baby, not even maybe 1 year old at the time of 9/11, chances are good there are quite a few of those who are now 18-year-old men and women who were fighting this war still in Afghanistan.
The events of 9/11 had such a long tail. You know, we're still dealing with the wars, the anger in the world. I have a memory not of that day, but of a few years later in Iraq, covering that war and going to the gym in the green zone where the American group was based, and seeing on the wall a picture of the Twin Towers and the similar mural in the dining room. And the message was, we're avenging what Iraq did to us on 9/11. Well, that was false. That was an idea that people allowed people deliberately spread. But Iraq was not responsible for 9/11. And it's just one of the awful tragedies that we went into that war with so many Americans thinking they were taking revenge for what had been done on 9/11, and entering a war that's had just such disastrous consequences for us, for Iraq, for the region. It's a special regret for me.
And Gene, we were talking about all the mistakes made by U.S. policymakers across the Bush and Obama administrations, and of course now the Trump administration. But you know, the original sin actually in the response to September 11th was Iraq. And it is documented that members of the Bush administration, knowing that Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with September 11th, still were planning an attack on Iraq immediately following September 11th, even though they had nothing to do with it. The Secretary of Defense, current Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, was called to prepare for a war in Iraq in early 2002. His response was, "Are you out of your mind?" And the fact is, yes, there were some policy people in the Bush administration who strategically were out of their mind.
Yeah, and think of the implications. Think of all that has changed in the world because of the decision, and it was a decision to use 9/11, which had nothing to do with Iraq, as an excuse, as an occasion to take out Saddam Hussein's regime and to change the Middle East and change the world. Think of all that's happened since. After 4 days after 9/11, I dropped my older son off at college at the University of Chicago, and which was just this wrenching thing. I remember and they have a ceremony there. It's sort of an invocation. Students and parents, of course, gather in the Rockefeller Chapel, and that was on the Saturday after, and they it's a program. I remember the dean saying that parents always remember the week they dropped their child off at college, but that no one would ever forget the week that you students started your college careers, and at the end of the ceremony, you walk up the street and there are student monitors, and they send students one way and parents the other way, and that's the last you see of your kid. I just remember tears rolling down my cheek as I drove 12 hours home, listening to the coverage, radio coverage of the aftermath. Just never forget it.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.